welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast as we continue on here with some NFL conversations. And I want to look a little bit into the NFL Top 100 list that was fully released over the course of the weekend, an annual tradition where leading up to the NFL season, the NFL Network teases this list going 10 players or so at a time. And this year, there was definitely a little bit of controversy that was sparked in the top 10 with Tyreek Hill taking home the number one spot on this list. Now, Tyreek, we just talked about him at length yesterday because he agreed to this new restructured contract with the Dolphins that made him the highest paid wide receiver in terms of fully guaranteed money in NFL history. And Tyreek, I'm really glad that he is getting the credit he deserves in terms of being one of easily the best players in the NFL. I feel like it's him and Justin Jefferson really rivaling for that number one overall spot. It's a really tough call between the two of them. But Tyreek, I think that too many people just view him as just a speedster and look at those years when he was with Kansas City as that is who he is now. He still has that same athletic ability, but I think that he is greatly improved in his understanding of the game, his patience, his ability to read defenses and find the open holes. All of it. I mean, he just makes the Dolphins offense what it is. And pairing him with head coach Mike McDaniel in terms of some of the pre-snap motions and such just almost feels unfair. But, you know, I'm definitely glad that Tyreek got recognition because I do feel like he can be undersold a little bit in terms of what his value is as a football player. But I think baseline here, to put anybody other than Patrick Mahomes at that number one spot is pretty crazy. Now, quickly here, running through the top 10, it's Tyreek Hill at number one, Lamar Jackson at number two, Christian McCaffrey number three, and then Patrick Mahomes, Myles Garrett, Chris Jones, Trent Williams, TJ Watt, Travis Kelce, and Max Crosby rounding out the top 10. So I do want to, before we get further into the discussion about the individual placements here, I was looking into when the players actually were polled for this list. This is entirely based off of the NFL players' perception. So to some degree, you know, us as fans or in the media, we can have our opinions, but I do think that you have to properly weigh the analysis of the players who are actually in the league that are consistently in these meetings and, you know, are in the film sessions looking at how to defend and neutralize some of the top players in the NFL. So 100%, these are some of the active players I would say are just about the most valuable opinions you can possibly get on who the best players in the NFL currently are. But my issue with this is the fact that I was looking into when they are polled on this, and GQ Sports wrote a feature article on this list just about a month ago, and they said that the voting takes place during the regular season, usually from Thanksgiving to New Year's, which is just kind of a ridiculous concept to me. I understand that players are definitely more accessible during the regular season when you can go into team facilities and the locker rooms and just sort of quickly pull them away as opposed to in the summer where everybody may be scattered. But I still think that, you know, the idea of getting some sort of a sample size from the current season and then voting, but having that sample size be the least valuable, least impactful sample size out of the entire season is just kind of a crazy concept to me. And I do think that it sort of explains some of the placements on this, including Tyreek Hill at number one, where during that time it seemed that he was going to be on pace for 2,000 receiving yards. So that's why he ends up being number one. And Patrick Mahomes was having a pretty underwhelming season, at least up to that point, by his standards as well. He was still ranked number 4 on this list, so by no means do I think that it's majorly disrespectful to him. But At the same time, you see him struggling maybe the first couple weeks, and the receiving situation is a little bit of a nightmare, and the Chiefs aren't putting up the same number of points as they typically do. So you vote on it then. I still feel like at that point, Patrick Mahomes should be unquestionably the best player in the NFL, in my opinion. But then we see him able to, despite all of the issues they were dealing with, make the big plays at the end of games to help put the Chiefs, on top in these playoff matchups, and he goes on to win a second straight Super Bowl. So I just think that, taking a regular season sample size for the argument of, well, we want to see these guys actually play, but have it be early in the year where there is more dysfunction and all of that. I think that it's bad practice from the NFL. But, it is what it is. I think especially if you're going to poll during the regular season, at least release it at the end of the regular season and before the playoffs start up, so we see Patrick Mahomes go on to win a Super Bowl, and then we're looking back at this list seeing Lamar Jackson's above him. He just beat him in that head-to-head matchup in the AFC Championship. So I feel like the timing of it as well, you can't have that much time elapse in between when you make the list and when you choose to release it, because just so much happens in between then. I was thinking about this, and I think that the best possible option would be for them to poll immediately following after the playoffs. But if they are going to do during the regular season, the NFL has been kicking around the idea of extending the regular season to 18 games, possibly adding a universal bye week in the middle of the year, some sort of an all-star week. I think that would be the perfect time to release a list like this, and it would be interesting as well. Obviously, I know that would probably be a little bit of a cram for the producers of putting all of it together. Would definitely be more difficult, but I just think it would be actually pretty cool if they released it in the middle of the season, and it would just be funny to see players sort of using it as bulletin board material and just give the list a little bit more recognition, draw more attention to it, as to this point where, to be honest, I don't really care about the NFL Top 100 list all that much anyways, and that's why I'm not going to let myself get outraged by anything on this list, but some people do really care about it, and to that, I just feel like the NFL is hurting themselves in terms of public perception based off of the way they go about this. But as much as I just said, I don't really care all that much about the placements. I did want to run through a couple things here. And I wanted to start with the quarterback position. Top 5 quarterbacks: Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott. Like I said, I think that Mahomes should be number 1 on basically any list that you're talking about with the NFL. Having Lamar above him, I get it. Lamar is, on that next tier right below him, but I still just feel like it's never right to have Patrick Mahomes as, not the best quarterback in the league, because he just so clearly is. But I wanted to zoom out even a little bit more, extending the list there. CJ Stroud ranked as the number 6 quarterback, and Brock Purdy, Jordan Love, Tua Tagovailoa, and at number 10, Joe Burrow. Number 39 overall player, number 10 quarterback, which is lunacy in my eyes. Again, this is a little bit of an indictment of the players being pulled in the middle of the season. Joe Burrow at that point was dealing with the calf injury early on that led to, him playing worse, the Bengals not meeting expectations and all of that, but I still feel like Joe Burrow is one of those elite quarterbacks, and having him this low on the list is pretty crazy to me. And I definitely was not a fan of that. Especially with some of these other guys. Tua is fine. I like Jordan Love. I like Brock Purdy, but I don't feel like any of them are close to necessarily that elite conversation. Now, could they work themselves into it? Absolutely. But Joe Burrow, I think, is just on another playing field at this point. And then I wanted to also highlight a little bit of the conversation around the receivers as well. Top 5, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jefferson, probably a little bit lower considering the fact that he was dealing with injuries during last season, and CeeDee Lamb had a season of his career. That being said, definitely not going to bash CeeDee Lamb. I think that he is one of those elite wide receivers, so, you're sort of splitting hairs there between 2 and 3. But I was really surprised, again, about the disrespect of Davante Adams, who ends up outside of the top 10 in wide receivers. Puka Nacua, or Davante Adams was actually number 10 exactly. Jamar Chase was number 11. Puka Nacua above both of them. And I'm definitely a big fan of Puka, but I don't know how you can have him leapfrog both of these other receivers that have been in that elite conversation just based off of one half of the regular season. And I think the future is very bright with Nacua, but I think that is definitely an overreaction. And I don't know, again, ultimately, it's not that deep, and the players themselves are the ones voting, so what does my opinion have in comparison to the players who are actually scheming against them? But I just think that it's a messy conversation. It's always just to spark up these debates that ultimately don't matter all that much. Some of the lists that we put together are so divisive, and it is fun, but I think that the NFL could definitely improve upon the process that they do this list and make it a little bit more meaningful. But let me know what your thoughts were in the comments section, what your biggest surprises were out of it. I haven't exactly put hours into this list, so maybe there were some other big headliners that I didn't hit on. Be happy to respond to what you guys have to say in the comment section. But we are going to now be moving on here and looking ahead to the upcoming season and previewing what's to come for the Dallas Cowboys. So we will be diving into that. But first, a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.